You ever wondered what would have happened if Gannicus had accepted the offer to stay in the Ludus in exchange for coin from Batiatus, as he had mentioned at the end of Gods of the Arena? Gannicus would have stayed and been able to come and go as he pleases. He would not be bound by an oath or be a slave anymore, and he wouldn't have to follow orders from Lanista Batiatus. He could train and eat as he likes and go out freely. There are many scenarios to consider, such as the relationships with Crixus. Spartacus is rising whilst Gannicus is still within the Ludus, in the house quarters of Batiatus, and who would become the champion. Also, there's Animaeus. However, let's suppose Gannicus told Animaeus the truth before Batiatus interrupted their talk when they talked. Animaeus would be angry after Gannicus tells him the truth with Melita and his relationship, but he would eventually forgive Gannicus after some time. Gannicus would show deep regret for lying to Animaeus, and I believe Animaeus would forgive him, as he was told the truth. Now since we got that out of the way, let's continue with the story with these events in mind. Gannicus accepted Batiatus' offer. Ultimately, Gannicus chose to accept Batiatus' offer. He realized that his skills and reputation as a gladiator could bring him more than just a fleeting taste of freedom. With his charismatic charm and prowess in the arena, Gannicus captivated the crowds and became a legend in his own right. His battles were celebrated not only by the Roman spectators but also by his fellow gladiators, who admired his skill and leadership. Gannicus would still be the champion of the House of Batiatus and train with the others, but not in a forced, timely manner, just as he pleases and goes. Animaeus and he would surely have sparring bouts, even though Animaeus is the Doctori. Crixus would not become the champion, but he would be a close second, similar to Barca and Crixus in their relationship. Gannicus would have a proper rematch with Crixus when he stays. After all, has been cleared from the past and most likely beat Crixus easily. The Gaul would pose a threat at first, but Gannicus' keen battle spirit and raw skill would simply overpower Crixus. Their power difference was also clearly shown in their bout within the city of Sinuessa. In the near future, after Crixus proved his worth and became the Gaul and the champion, as in Blood and Sand, Spartacus arrives, just as we've seen. Gannicus was never as aggressive towards newcomers as Crixus and the others were, so Crixus' treatment of Spartacus would mostly remain the same. Gannicus wouldn't miss the show of Animaeus and his introduction though. As Spartacus survives the arena, Gannicus' interest in the Thracian would surely be fueled, as Gannicus cares about people with such feats and those who pose a challenge to himself. All events play out the same, and after Spartacus earns the mark and defeats Crixus in the duel during the test, Gannicus sees the potential in Spartacus, as does Animaeus. They would surely discuss it. Gannicus would be surprised at how Spartacus was able to beat the test against Crixus. Spartacus loses the fight to Crixus in the next episode in the arena, as usual, and all events stay mostly the same, up to episode 5. As the fight for Theocles comes to light, Batiatus has Gannicus at hand. This is where things get interesting. Gannicus is surely chosen as one fighter, but a second fighter would still be needed, even with someone of Gannicus' caliber. Now, since Gannicus and Crixus are the two obvious choices, they would likely work well together, without the rivalry that Spartacus and Crixus had. Yet, Batiatus wouldn't want to risk losing two of his best gladiators in a row, even though that would not be the case. This is what Batiatus most likely would think against the shadow of death and his reputation after all, so he would send Spartacus aside of Gannicus instead of Crixus and Gannicus at the same time. Gannicus and Spartacus' teamwork would work well because they have similar characteristics, and Gannicus would respect Spartacus for earning the mark in the traditional way and defeating Crixus in the test, and after the feats of him surviving in the arena as well. So both of them are chosen for the shadow of death. They prepare for the battle, and since Animaeus can see them both working well together, their preparation is done in a really good manner, better than Crixus and Spartacus ever could. Just to be clear, if Crixus and Gannicus had fought Theocles, Crixus would not have been so badly injured, obviously, as Crixus' respect for Gannicus and being the champion would be too high to not work in teamwork with him for such an opponent. Back with Gannicus and Spartacus. Animeus prepares them well and tells Gannicus the potential he sees in Spartacus. The pursuit for his wife is still ongoing by Batiatus. The day of the fight arrives. They start their fight in a good position, dragging Theocles to the back, but they soon realize he is almost immune to stabs and cuts as in the series. Spartacus gets overpowered by Theocles, and Gannicus has his solo showdown with the mighty giant. Gannicus is much more skilled than Crixus, so he can hold his ground against the Shadow of Death, but he is unable to deliver a killing blow. Gannicus receives many wounds but manages to deliver some back as well. Spartacus tries to find a way in and recalls the training with Animeus. He manages to give Theocles a few cuts before Theocles pushes him back. Just as he is about to strike down Spartacus, Gannicus intervenes and pushes Theocles back, helping Spartacus back on his feet. They share a moment of laughter before joining forces again to bring Theocles down. Spartacus and Gannicus finish Theocles off, sharing the victory. The Shadow of Death is defeated, but it takes a huge toll on Gannicus and Spartacus. Nobody is fatally wounded thanks to Gannicus' skill. Crixus watches with jealousy as he sees Spartacus sharing the glory of defeating the Shadow of Death beside Gannicus. He is not fatally wounded, and as stated earlier, he wouldn't have been if he had fought alongside Gannicus instead of Spartacus in our what-if scenario now against Theocles, because Gannicus and Crixus would overpower Theocles, obviously. I mean, Gannicus could actually solo him if you think about it. Anyways, Spartacus' events after this fight play out mostly the same, with his wife's death and his acceptance of his fate as Spartacus. Gannicus would have his own business, still be the champion and continue to fight, as would Crixus. Batiatus sees great potential in Spartacus after he defeated Theocles alongside Gannicus and survived. He chooses him to fight against the Thracians, as in the series, and he becomes Spartacus officially, accepting his new identity. All events play out the same. Crixus fights against the champion of Pompeii, defeating him easily as he was not injured by Theocles and still had continuous training in our what-if scenario. Spartacus continues to grow in skill with Animeus noting his rapid growth as a gladiator. By this point, he has already reached the levels of fighters like Crixus and even beyond if they were to engage in a proper one-on-one bout, according to Animeus. Gannicus is surprised at how far Spartacus has come. Up until now, the events with Varro, Spartacus gets injured and learns that Batiatus killed his wife, as we've already seen in the series. Gannicus becomes a wealthy man by this point with all the coin he had earned, similar to Theocles before his death, as he was retired and a wealthy man, you could say. Spartacus and Gannicus have friendly bouts from time to time in the Ludus quotas, in the training area, as they did before, with Gannicus defeating Spartacus each time, until now. After years of Spartacus growing as a skilled fighter, for the first time manages a draw in their sparring bout, surprising Gannicus. Crixus and Spartacus' battle would mostly stay the same, as his actions would still strain his relationship with Naevia, resulting in the same events, and Crixus being drugged. The rebellion is slowly taking effect with Agron and the others joining. Gannicus is also starting to see the dark side of the Romans, slowly comprehending these events. He is present when Crixus is tortured and Batiatus announces his allegiance with Glaba. Spartacus has already reached the skill levels of fighters like Gannicus by this point. The rebellion takes place, with Gannicus now as an ally, similar to what happened historically. Gannicus aids in killing the Romans and Batiatus ends up dead. Everything stays the same, except Animeus joins the rebellion much earlier due to his friendship with Gannicus. The rebellion is in progress and a new era begins for Gannicus, Spartacus, and the others. Up to the end of Season 1, Blood and Sand, I would write the story basically like this. This is how I would write a scenario in which Gannicus accepted the offer and stayed in the Ludus instead of leaving, as he did in the series. So basically, all in all, if I had to write a script on changing the events, because We can generally not take everything as is in the series if we want to include Gannicus staying in the Ludus. Because as we've already said, the events with Spartacus and Crixus would drastically change, as well as who is champion and who is not, so we cannot take it as in the series and had to basically rewrite many things to our, own needs when Gannicus stays in the Ludus in this what if scenario. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on my next Spartacus video. Thanks for watching.